I am welcomed by Portia Archer, the leader of the WTA CEO, and she's joining me from Saudi Arabia right now, although you can't tell from the background. Hi, Portia.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
Good. I was looking at the results of the WTA Finals, which are in Riyadh, and it struck me that it was sort of been either one three-set match after another or just a different compilation of winners during the round-robin portion of the finals. And, you know, it reminded me again that the women's tour right now is in such a markedly different place than the men's tour in terms of who can win its biggest tournaments. You know, you've got 8 women right now in the WTA finals. I have no idea who's going to win of the 8. You probably could even extend that out beyond those 8, certainly in terms of the players that are competing in major championship finals. Whereas in the men's tour, it's kind of the same 2 guys every single time winning the biggest tournament. So which is better? Tell me, do you like the idea where you have a lot of parity? Is that better for the women's game? Or would you like to have a dominant player or 2 that everyone else is trying to knock off?
Well, I think the fans are probably a better group to ask that question and to answer it. My personal opinion is I think, you know, the WTA Tour is in a prime position, and I think we serve fans, or maybe even super serve them to a large extent, because we do have that depth and we do have that parity of excellence, really, and that's shown here at our Elite Eight. That's shown throughout our season, where we've had a number of different champions win titles across the tour. So that's my personal preference.
I asked Billie Jean King the same question, and her answer was, it's best for the women's tour when there are rivalries. Is there anything that the WTA can do to facilitate rivalries?
I think we can provide the opportunity for our players to play in our top events week after week, so that top players can compete and those rivalries can be built. I think we've done that over the last several years. We have this concept called our circuit structure, which really enables the top players to play at our top 1,000 and 500 events each week and compete for, you know, high levels of prize money, high levels of ranking points. And so I think a lot of those rivalries are beginning to be created and beginning to be formed, even as we have that depth of excellence or parity, if you will, across the tour. So I think those are the things that we can do, create that environment for our players to play and have those matchups week in and week out, which creates those rivalries.
You mentioned the prize money. Let's get into the business of women's tennis a little bit. You just recently, a few months ago, renewed your media rights deal with the Tennis Channel. Walk me through the thinking behind why the Tennis Channel was the right home for WTA events moving forward. Because, look, it is a limited audience. You're very much catering toward tennis fans. You do see some other leagues kind of going in the other direction now, where they want to just try to have the biggest, broadest reach possible. You guys decided not to do that. So explain to me the logic.
Yeah, the logic was really, we believe, and believed at that time, that women's sports, tennis in particular, has been undervalued in the marketplace. And so one of the primary things that we were looking for in a television partner was a partner that was willing to invest, that believed in providing us with the value that we have earned and that our fans demand. So I think Tennis Channel came to the table, and they were really ready to invest at a very high level relative to some of the other bidders that we were talking to. They had a real good strategy and alignment with our vision of how we wanted to elevate the sport. There was not just investment in terms of the license fee that we received, but also investment in marketing resources and storytelling and content. And so those were really important values and aspirations for us. I think that we'll still be able to reach audiences in other ways. The linear audience, as you know, is important and will enable scale, but there are many other ways that you can reach audiences, whether that's through streaming or digital platforms and also through social platforms. So we don't feel like we have limited ourselves in any way. And we're also a global sport. And so we have different linear and digital and um, sort of OTT, if you will, deals around the world, including the deal that we have with Tennis Channel. So I think in the aggregate, Tennis Channel was one part of the puzzle, and our thesis was really coming in. We deserve value, and we wanted to get a reset, if you will, on our rights fees. Tennis Channel more than met that ambition, and there was great alignment in terms of how we wanted to continue to grow the sport, grow the audience, and storytell around it.
I know you guys have an initiative to have equal pay in all tournaments by, I think, is it by 2033 roughly? That's certainly a goal every women's sports league would want to have. Obviously, there's gross disparities in pay in most other professional leagues between men and women. So to start with, I ask you, the numbers are not made public in terms of what the WTA is making from its media rights deal versus what the ATP is. But by saying we think we can reach equal pay by 2033, is sort of the tacit acknowledgement there that the revenue coming in for the WTA is similar to that of the ATP?
I think we're still an undervalued asset, Alex, and I think we've got a long way to go to reach exact equality with the men. And I don't actually even know, Alex, that that's our benchmark. I mean, I think if we can get beyond what is equal with the men, we want to do that. So I think we still have a way to go. We haven't, in my view, sort of received our full value. We continue to be undervalued, but I think we're going to continue to work. We're going to continue to demand. We're going to continue to position ourselves so we can go out and we can acquire and earn the fees, whether that's in media rights, whether that's in sponsorship, whether that's in data that we believe we have earned. So we're on our way. It's going to take us some time to get there. What we're committing to as a part of our pathway to equal prize money at our top level events is we're committing to the revenue and the monetization that we earn. We're going to pour that back into the tournaments at a high level to then help fund equal prize money. And our tournaments are also going to make an increased investment.
We mentioned at the top you're joining us from Saudi Arabia. You have a partnership with the Public Investment Fund, the PIF. You guys announced a maternity fund earlier this year where players are paid for up to 12 months for maternity leave. I'm just curious, how does it work? Because, you know, like for most people, a maternity fund kicks in where you get, let's say, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it may be, and it's based on their salary. But of course, tennis players don't have salaries. So are all of the tennis players getting paid the same amount of money, whether they're ranked 1 or 320?
Yes. So there are a little over 300 players who would be eligible, and that eligibility is in part driven by your membership as a full member of the WTA and in part by the number of events that you played in the previous 12 months before becoming pregnant. But every eligible athlete, WTA athlete, will receive the same amount over a 12-month period. And you'll have 12 months available of that same pay for every athlete. And then in addition to that, if you're not the child bearer, you'll also have 2 months of parental leave available to you, so that if you're adopting or, you know, there's a surrogate surrogate that allowed you to start your family or extend your family, you'll still have those 2 months available of parental leave to bond with your child. So it's equal across all of the WTA athletes, the pay that they get during their maternity leave.
You're more than a year into this partnership with PIF. There was criticism at the time you struck the deal, given the history of the WTA and its sort of push for equal rights with women, and the history of the Saudi Arabian government not having equal rights for women. Just explain how you got comfortable with the partnership, and then maybe what critics of it aren't understanding correctly.
Yeah, I don't know about the second part, but I can tell you what got me comfortable. What got me comfortable was just a clear understanding that sport is a vehicle for progress. Sport can often be a vehicle for change. And I think coming here, our players were very clear that they wanted to come here and not only play tennis, they wanted to come here and to make an impact. And that the platform that we have as a part of the WTA, a global brand, we play in over 50 countries. We have an audience of over 1 billion. With that platform, we had an opportunity to do more than contest a tennis tournament. We had an opportunity to get out into the community, to engage in community development, to engage with communities of young people, of parents, and help expose them to tennis. We had an opportunity to train PE teachers on tennis and how to train or teach young students how to compete in the sport. We had an opportunity to train and develop coaches, as well as do a number of clinics throughout schools. So once I understood what the full program was around coming to Saudi Arabia, and the decision was made with those things in mind, and that was expected and demanded by the players, I personally thought that it was a good opportunity to use the platform of the WTA for good and to affect change and to affect progress, or at the very least, not hurt anything that could be happening here. And I think it's made a tremendous impact, Alex. I can't tell you what I've seen enough about what I've seen personally. I can't tell you enough about how our athletes, who have now reached, close to 40,000 people in Saudi Arabia as a result of us being here year round, not just the 8 days of our tournament. So understanding the full program around coming to Saudi Arabia to contest our finals, and the impact that we could make in providing possibilities for young people and the communities of people that we've been able to reach and will continue to reach even in the final year of our time here, was significant for me. And it was really helpful in helping me get comfortable. I think the final thing was also just understanding from Princess Rima, who's the ambassador to the U.S. from Saudi Arabia, her helping us understand their vision for 2030, they call it, which very much has women and sports as an anchor to some of the ambitions that they want to achieve. So those were the things that got me comfortable with the decision to come.
You mentioned, the top 8 players compete in this finals, WTA finals, and the prize money is in the, many millions of dollars for the winner. Talk about the players that are ranked 100, 200. Are you comfortable with the amount of money that these players make today relative toward the top players? Do you feel like the tour provides players that are professional but not at that level with a comfortable enough existence in terms of prize money, where tennis becomes an inviting sport rather than a sport where the vast majority of people say, look, I got to pay my own way here. It's just too difficult to make a living doing this.
Yeah, I think, tennis is a professional sport, and it's also a sport that you choose to be a part of. We don't have teams that pay the salaries of players. Our athletes are self-employed, independent contractors. And I think your performance under that kind of construct is really an indicator of what your compensation is or can be. So would I like to see players make more? Do I think it's a tough way to make a living? Yes, and yes is the answer to both of those questions that I've put forth. But I think at the tour level, we have created an environment where people can compete. They can demonstrate their skill level. They have an opportunity to progress their rankings so that they can get into tournaments that provide higher prize money and higher points. So I think structurally we've got the right things in place. But do I wish we could pay more prize money? Yes. And do I think it is challenging? It's difficult. If we use other sports as a proxy, there are a finite number of men, for example, who are in the NBA, who make the salaries that we talk about, that are astronomical. There are many others in sort of other leagues, affiliate leagues and otherwise, who don't make that. And I can speak personally about the NBA G League, which is where I used to work before joining the WTA. And in that case, did I wish that those young men made more? Yes, absolutely. Do I think that the NBA G League was structured correctly and had all the right things in place to allow those young men to ascend where they can get more compensation? The answer to that was yes as well.
I mentioned I spoke with Billie Jean King. She said something to me about the women's tour and the men's tour potentially coming together. You can take a listen to what she had to say.
I tried to get the men and women together, but we're still not there. I still pray before I'm out of here that we will be, but we started...
When you're saying together, meaning?
Oh, I want us to be the same association.
What are your thoughts about merging the ATP and the WTA Tour?
I think there are two parts to it, Alex. I think the first part, and it's what we're pursuing now, is the merger of the commercial assets that make up the two tours. And I think that aggregation in that case is a great idea. I think if we can go to the marketplace and position ourselves to acquire sponsorships or to acquire media or broadcast rights or to acquire data rights, doing that with those commercial assets combined so that we're selling tennis and those buyers don't have to make a choice between Coco or Carlos is a great thing. And I think that's really, really healthy for the sport. So that's one part of it. I think that combining or merging the two tours, the competitive, the sporting code aspect, would be the second step. And I'm actually a fan of that as well over time. But I think the commercial assets is the first step. And then I think the tours can look at what are the differences that we need to keep the same, because the WTA athletes are different from the ATP athletes. What the needs are different. But I think once we complete that first step, we can look at sort of that second step. And in the meantime, we can still collaborate and coordinate very closely as we do today around rules, for example. They should be coordinated. They should be largely the same unless there are instances where there needs to be distinction. For example, rankings protection for women athletes wouldn't be a rule or something that exists for the ATP. So there should be differences where they're necessary. But I'm a fan of aggregation or combining at that level, at the sporting co competition level as well.
Have you done the analysis on whether or not it could be more lucrative to sell the media rights as one?
Yeah, we're in the process actually of kind of not completing that analysis, but really evaluating it and vetting it through, along with the ATP and other stakeholders that would be a part of the merger. The ATP is organized differently from the WTA. They have their sponsorship rights, and their media rights and their data rights, in separate entities. At the WTA, we have all of those rights consolidated into our commercial arm, WTA Ventures. But we're in the process of having those conversations, vetting those assumptions. But we do think that aggregation is good, and going to the marketplace in a combined fashion is a very good thing for the sport, and both tours would benefit from that.
So, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're pretty optimistic that maybe this is something that we're headed toward.
I am. I'm optimistic. I mean, I think we've been in discussions for some time, and there's still some challenges and things that we have to overcome and work out and get alignment on. But I think we're making good progress, and I am optimistic because I think that it's one of the best things we could do for the sport. I also think it would be a positive change, and our sport really isn't known for making a lot of changes. So yeah, I'm a big proponent.
I have to ask you about the sports business question of the week, which is this big betting scandal. Of course, that's NBA related, but have you started to think about how betting on women's tennis could evolve into some sort of scandal? Have you spoken to the players at all about it? You know, how big of an issue is it in the back of your mind?
You know, it's something I think that we've thought about for some time. It's not incorporated into our sport at the moment. It's a part of our integrity regime, if you will. And so we have at the WTA for some time had this integrity regime that, you know, sort of helps us evaluate, monitor, investigate, enforce any number of rules around the integrity of the sport, the integrity of the game. We beefed that up in the last 4 years in 2021, developing this agency across all of the sort of T7 governing bodies in tennis, called the ITIA, the International Tennis Integrity Association. And so it's something that we talk about as being a part of the ITIA, which is an objective body, but it includes representation from the WTA and the rest of the governing bodies that make up the T7. And it's definitely something we think about. It's unfortunate what we see happening in the NBA. It's also something that we see and talk about in terms of the sort of damage that can be done from, you know, gamblers who have a really bad habit with gambling, and who then take that out on our athletes and target our athletes through social media and social media abuse, and how we can combat that. And, you know, we have investments in platforms that help us do that help us monitor the social abuse and the activity, that help us even take down, in some instances, that social abuse targeted toward our players. We try to work in combination with our Threat Matrix, is the agency and the platform that we use to work with the social networks and platforms to help hold them to greater accountability about this behavior and activity happening on their platforms. So we think about gambling, but we think about social media abuse. We think about the integrity of the sport quite a bit. Obviously, with the recent ongoings in the NBA, it's something that we will be talking about increasingly with our players.
Last question. We're clearly in a moment in time where there's a lot of energy from an investment standpoint in women's sports. Women's tennis has been really the leader in American women's sports for decades in terms of issues like equal pay for men and just overall attention, I would say. Are the commissioners of the WNBA, the NWSL, or other people involved in sort of the leadership of these leagues coming to you at all and asking you questions right now about how do we sustain this momentum? And if so, what advice are you giving to them?
I wouldn't say they've come to us formally or officially, but we have very good relationships, professional relationships with the commissioners of those sports. In this case, it happens to be two women. In the case of the WTA, we also happen to have two women who head up both our commercial division and our competition division. And so we do have that dialogue, I would say, informally. They also have an opportunity, as well as their players, to visit our events, to see what we're doing in terms of player services. There have been a number of questions asked about our maternity fund and what were the considerations in standing that up and how it was funded and our sort of novel partnership with PIF. So it is something that we talk about because I think each of us individually and collectively understand and feel a responsibility toward to lift up women's sports, even if we're operating in a particular avenue or league. And so we always tell them, you know, whether we're talking about something in particular, like the maternity fund, or we're talking about in general, we continue to say, fight for what you're worth. Continue to hold your sponsors and your media partners to that standard that you want to reach. Don't accept less. We talk about how you develop advocacy in and around the sport to build your case. So those are the conversations that we have, but it's more informal, I would say, than sort of a formal kind of dialogue.
Portia, appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us and enjoy Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Alex. Good to be with you.